Welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have a presentation entitled Tapping the Power of Live Action Role Play to Bring Digital Classrooms to Life by Jenny Lim and Greg Tefry, who are game designers on Vox Pop. Jenny is a game designer, writer, producer, and gigantic mechanic with a history in film production. She currently leads research and writing and multimedia production of Vox Pop, a series of collaborative live action role plays for high school classrooms. Jenny's work has been shown at the Tribeca Film Festival, Museum of Modern Art in New York, and the Museum of Moving Image, and on HBO. In short, she's kind of a rock star. Greg, as another rock star, co-founded the game studio Gigantic Mechanic to explore new ways to bring fun and engaging experiences to the world around us through real-world physical and social play. In his game design, he aims to create real-world experiences that engage players physically, socially, and emotionally with the people and places around them. Greg is also the co-founder and director of Come Out and Play, an annual festival of street games in New York City. Take it away, Greg and Jenny.
Hello, everyone. Is my audio coming through? Okay, great. So I am going to, there is a link now in the chat where you can follow along with our slides if you'd like as we present, and I'm also going to be sharing my screen. There we go. So Greg and I are game designers at Gigantic Mechanic. And we're here to talk about our project Vox Pop and also live action role plays in general, and how you can use them to bring your digital classroom to life. Gigantic Mechanic has been making games for museums, schools, and festivals for over 10 years. We helped design the Senate immersion role play at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute, where high school students role play being US senators, collaborating and passing legislation. We kept getting feedback from teachers that was very positive and asking how we can get these kinds of experiences into the classroom for people who can't make it all the way to the Kennedy Center. So for the past couple of years, we've been developing Vox Pop. It's a set of live action role plays for US history, civics, and social studies classrooms. It comes with a custom software that you can access from any internet-enabled device. We've designed Vox Pop to be really easy for teachers to pick up and play with 20 minutes of preparation or less. In Vox Pop, every student is given a unique role to play during a historical crisis, like the Pullman Strike or the Shays Rebellion. Students then have to work together in character to find a solution to the crisis. The Vox Pop software takes care of a lot of the administrative details like distributing profiles and tallying student votes. And it also comes with a teacher page that through which you can control the flow of the role play and see instructions and suggestions. So the feedback that we've gotten from teachers has been really positive. They say it's easy to use, it gets the students engaged and passionate, and it creates a non-threatening environment for students to argue and ask questions. We, as part of our development and work with the SBIR grant, we conducted a study with researchers at NYU. And so you can read more feedback from teachers and students at our website if you'd like. So Vox Pop was designed for the classroom. It's a face-to-face, live-action, in-character role-play experience. But in these very unusual times, just because we're not in the classroom doesn't mean that we can't use role plays to teach. So today, we wanted to go over some free resources and rules of thumb as you approach remote role play in your classroom, digital classroom. And we'll also take you through a remote role play prototype of Vox Pop near the end. So the first model of role play is a very light lift. It's the letter writing role play. Here I've linked to the Civil War lesson plan from PBS, but you can pretty much do this with any set of primary sources. The way it works is students will analyze personal letters written from the time period that you're studying, and then they'll pair up and write from their own perspective, write their own letters from the perspective of imagined people during that time. So some strengths of this model are that it gets students to think from the perspective of people living in this historical moment. And you can also do this really easily as a remote exercise. The major pitfall is that students often end up writing as themselves. That just generally tends to happen with role play. It's really hard to be anyone but yourself. And so the instant feedback of a more live action, real-time experience can remind people to stay in character. The next model is from Model Diplomacy. You may know them from their more in-depth foreign policy exercises that are aimed at college classrooms, but they also make these pop-up cases. In these pop-up cases, students discuss contemporary crises. So the one that I've pictured here is one in which students pretend to be members of the National Security Council, and they're debating how to respond to the global recession resulting from COVID. Some strengths of the pop-up cases are that they're very of the moment. Students get to engage with the topics that they're hearing about at home and online. And also they're really easy to distribute. Every student gets the same one-page handout. Some of the pitfalls include that the pop-up cases are aimed at older or more advanced students. For example, in this one, the students are asked to debate things like debt relief and global stimulus. So they're definitely not appropriate to every classroom. And also there's a risk that we run in general where if you make work that's very topical, it might quickly turn irrelevant. So for example, the first COVID pop-up that Model Diplomacy came out with in February was about whether the US should impose travel restrictions and trade restrictions between us and China. And within a few weeks, that question was rendered moot. So now I'd like to discuss some heavier lift role plays. And by this, I mean that the role plays are pretty in-depth. Students are assigned specific characters, and the event is structured into rounds. I'll be pulling examples from the Zin educational project, which has really great role plays that are available free online, and from VoxPop. Both Zin and VoxPop use historical moments that have parallels to today as the core setting of the role play. We've found that historical distance gives students room to think more freely and more broadly. And they're smart. They immediately recognize that questions that were very important from the founding of America remain very live today. So first, I'd like to set up some role play rules of thumb. These rules are true across the board, from historical role plays like VoxPop to traditional games like Dungeons and Dragons. First, you have to set up the world. In Dungeons and Dragons, you start in a tavern full of elves and orcs. And in VoxPop, in the Shays Rebellion roleplay, it's Boston, it's 1786, and we overthrew the British only 10 years ago. And already a lot of people feel oppressed by the new government. Some people even say that this new government is worse than the British. Setting up the world establishes the when and the where. Next, we establish the who. In the Shays Rebellion roleplay, we've got farmers. They can't pay their debts and they feel taken advantage of by bankers who think that farmers are just trying to break their promises. You may notice that these characters are painted in pretty broad strokes. Role-playing games in general, and in fact, sort of most games, tend to be about archetypes like fighters and sorcerers. And this is because players can really only remember a handful of details at any given time. And so the more clear you can make each player's core motivation in the game, the more directed and purposeful their play will be. That's why, behind the curtain a little bit, our profiles went from looking like the page on the left, and there's actually even more reading than that, to the page on the right. We're sort of peering over a student's shoulder in that photo. Basically, every character gets a want and a fear, which is unique to that type of character, or sorry, shared among that type of character. All farmers want the freedom to work their land and grow their farms. And then every character also gets a unique bio that's just one or two sentences and has a one or two details. So we've established the who, which is characters, and the when and the where, which is the world. And now it's time to set up the conflict. That establishes the what and the why. In Dungeons and Dragons, characters are dealing with life or death stakes. There's a dragon killing our friends. And in the Shays roleplay, similarly, we're dealing with a rebellion. You know, the country might fall apart before we've even started. This is, again, sort of towards that purpose of having students feel, or players feel, an urgency and a purpose and a real goal as they work their way through a simulation. So because the conflict in role plays about history tends to be pretty complex, it's time to think about how we can structure history role plays specifically and break the conflict down into multiple issues. We generally recommend breaking the conflict down into 3 issues. This allows students to think systematically. And in VoxPop, we also use this breakdown to allow for small group work. So in the Shays Rebellion roleplay, 3 issues are finance, representation, and rule of law. Now the setup is complete and it's time to move into the game. We think of these role plays as happening in essentially 3 major phases. The first is groups. Everyone works together in their character groups. All the farmers together will think about what it is that they want from the town hall. And this gets students into character, it gets them excited, and it gets them united in their groups as they move forward into the big battle. In both Zin and VoxPop, thinking about what your group wants takes the form of considering specific proposals. It's good to give students something concrete to think about, like, you know, is this proposal good for us? What about this one? Would this help us accomplish what we need? The second phase of the role play is compromise. So now that the students have all gotten really into character and really united in their cause, they now have to work across party lines to find a solution. The Zin roleplay, a worksheet is pictured here, offers the simplest model of compromise. In this roleplay, the compromise is an in-class event where the whole class goes through each issue together. In VoxPop, we break the compromise down into 2 stages. So first, students meet in their issue committees, like all the students thinking about finance, and they have a moment for smaller group work. Each committee contains members from every character group. So there are farmers and bankers, etc. And in their committees, the students have to pick one proposal to forward to a town hall vote. We provide the students with 3 proposals, partly because it takes a lot of work and historical knowledge to think up proposals, and partly because it allows us to provide a range of proposals that are favorable to different groups and to different degrees. However, you could, of course, ask your students to come up with their own proposals, especially if you're doing this in a remote context and they have time to work on their own. Then VoxPop progresses into a second stage of the compromise phase. This is the town hall where the whole class gets together and votes on the proposals that have come from the issue committees. This is the big battle of the role play. This is when the students are confronting their foes. This is in Dungeons and Dragons. This is when you're fighting the biggest dragon. This is a really excellent opportunity for students to give speeches. We usually ask for one in favor of a proposal and one against that proposal. And we very much encourage cheering and booing. this is a really great moment. And then the compromise phase ends with just seeing what it is you accomplished. This is the payoff that you've been working towards the whole time. Did you pass anything? And if so, what did you pass? So the final phase is the debrief. Here you go over what really happened, and the students sort of step out of their characters and return to reflecting on the exercise as themselves. Vox Pop recommends a couple questions like, how did your solution differ from what happened in the past? And what parallels do you see to today? I should note that the in-class debrief is especially important for students who played characters whose values don't align with theirs or ours. It provides the students an opportunity to express publicly what they think and to distance themselves from opinions that they may have expressed in character in the role play. This is a summary slide for future reference. These slides will stay online for a while, and I will put a link to them in the chat later. So I want to review the Zinn Education Project materials. I've spoken about them a bit. Some pitfalls to watch out for are that the Zinn role plays involve a lot of reading. So on the right of your screen, you should see the profile page for an unemployed person. That's one of 5 possible characters. That's just the profile page. The students have to do more reading than that. And so this can be a pretty big lift for certain classrooms. The other general thing to watch out for is that because the entire compromise phase takes place during one big group discussion, the student who has the loudest voice or the strongest internet might end up dominating. That said, the Zinn Education role plays have a lot of really great strengths. They're easy to distribute. All the students get the same worksheet. You can run them by phone conference really easily because all the materials are on paper, and they have a really interesting array of possible subjects. I want to note here that there are some general rules of thumb with running a role play, and the Zinn Education Project has a great blog about this as well. What we're aiming for is an intellectual understanding, what the characters wanted and why. On the Zinn blog, they say that students should walk away understanding that a person doesn't have to be evil in order to participate in oppressive practices. There are things that we are not aiming for with role plays, such as recreating trauma. So making some students pretend to be enslaved to other students, that really serves no intellectual purpose. It's just traumatic. And we generally want to avoid performances. We discourage accents, again, because what you're aiming for is an intellectual understanding. What you're not aiming for is like the best impression of an archetype. Finally, it's important to allow students to switch roles. We have one role play about the nullification crisis where some students play plantation owners. No student has asked to switch roles or has taken up the offer to switch roles. They're pretty unlikely to ask, but it's important that they feel that that's an opportunity they can take so that they don't feel trapped. This summer, Vox Pop is going to be starting a new role play about the civil rights movement. And we have a poll here where we ask, we would like to know what you all think about which topic you would be most likely to use in your class. So the link that's in the chat, I've lost track of the chat a little bit, should bring you to the page where you can vote here. We also have this poll on our website, voxpop.io. And we're curious about whether you're more interested in a role play that explores kind of a big item, a big moment, like the March on Washington or the Freedom Riders, something that's likely to come up in an exam, versus a more on-the-ground community organizing moment like the Greenwood Civil Rights Movement, which specifically probably wouldn't come up on your average exam, but is a really great example of like regular everyday people working together and making things happen in their communities. And of course, if you have any other suggestions, we'd love to hear it. So I'll pause here for a moment and look at what the chat is doing.
Jenny, there was a couple questions. Maybe we can take a answer some of those. Some of the people had asked about world history. I don't know if you want to address that.
Yeah, so we initially started this just focusing on a few moments in American history, but the more conferences we go to and the more teachers we talk to, we would love to do more about world history. Over the next year, we'll be refining our American history role plays. We'll have 5 that are available for free, online, always and forever for free for teachers. And then after that, I think we'll start working on some, hopefully, world history ones.
And then there was a question about how to handle the reading load. Like, how do you help support kids who may have more difficulty with reading?
With Vox Pop, we really don't have a lot of reading. Most of our material is conveyed through videos and then sort of structured class discussions after the videos where students then talk through what it is that they learned. The moments where there are reading, like looking at the proposals, the students analyze those in their small groups. And so that's partly a moment for students to all kind of make sure they're all on the same page. And of course, during that time, ideally, the teacher would walk around the classroom just checking in. I think I'm going to move on from this vote now, just because we have to, I want Greg to have some time to walk you through our sort of quick online port of Vox Pop. We've linked to resources throughout this slideshow, and it'll be available online. I mean, it is currently available online. You can also please email us. I'm Jenny at voxpop.io. Greg is Greg at voxpop.io. We can generally be found at that website. As I mentioned, Vox Pop is going to be available free online. That's starting in fall of 2021. And if all goes well, we will be testing, and by if all goes well, I mean we are back in physical classrooms in the fall. We really hope to be testing our role plays then. So if you might be interested in hosting us in your classroom, please do email us, and you can also sign up for our mailing list on voxpop.io. With that, I think I'm going to pass it over to Greg.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. So thanks so much for having us here today. This is super exciting just to be talking to other teachers and educators and hearing what people are working on. So when all this went down when we all kind of moved out of schools and into our kids' bedrooms, we started thinking about like how would we didn't want to lose out on this sort of the real, as Jenny was saying, lose out on the real value and fun of role playing. And I noticed that some of the teachers have said, some people have said in the chat that they love doing it, but it's hard in remote learning contexts. And I could definitely imagine. So we started thinking about how we might do something like that. And so we kind of put together a real quick prototype, because what we've been building before was very much geared at if you were there live in person. So I'll just put in the, again, I'll put in the chat window here the link to, if you want to follow along live. This is a sort of quick version we made of this that using slides.com, which is a free website. You can make a slideshows for students. One of the really great things about this one is that you can, as you click, it advances for everybody, and it also allows them to kind of interact with the slideshow in some ways, so they can play videos and also click on links. So if you wanted to give some of them specific information. So this is our quick down and dirty prototype of what a remote role playing might look like. So again, here's the Shays Rebellion. let's get started. So this slide here is here's where we would do that. What Jenny was talking about, setting up the worlds. So you could all click on the video. I'll play it here and then mute it in case. I'll play it here so you guys can all see this.
It's 1786, and America is struggling to find its footing as a nation. 10 years ago, colonists rebelled against British rule. Rich and poor paid dearly for the right to govern themselves. The rebels won and established a loose confederation of 13 states. Now it's September 1786, and trouble is brewing. Violent protests have spread across Massachusetts. Tension has mounted between the capital city of Boston and the rural parts of the state. In Boston, bankers work hard to establish a prosperous economy for Massachusetts. They say everyone must pay their debts. But farmers in the West, many veterans of the Revolution, can't pay their debts and taxes. They just want the freedom to work their land and support their families. Their fellow veterans, the regulators, demand more say in government. They want a government that serves everyone, not just the rich. Back in Boston, traders worry that the growing civil unrest is bad for business. They want a safe and stable state. We have all come to today's town hall to stop a civil war. We have here today representatives from the farmers, regulators, traders, and bankers. Can we find a solution?
Okay, so we set up the world a little bit. If you're less, in your classroom, this is where we start to get everyone into character. So in your classroom, you might be able to pre-assign characters to profiles to teach by students by emailing them out. But if you have a really large audience like this where you don't know everyone, you may have to do it randomly. So if your last name starts with A to F, you're a banker. And you can roll over the information, the roll at the top, and it'll show you some information about that. If your name starts with G, last name starts G to L, you're a trader. M to R, you're a regulator. And sorry, that should be S to Z, you're a farmer. So take a moment, read your profile, really pay attention to your bio and your wants and fears, because this is we've got some problems to solve for Massachusetts, and we need all of your help. So I'll give everyone a moment. So real quickly, farmers, any farmers out there? Farmers want to just type in the chat box? What do you guys? What do you want? What is it that you guys want right now in Massachusetts? You should be able to roll over this. So if you're a farmer, let's see. You want freedom to work our lands. Yes. And what do you fear? Going to jail because of debts and taxes. And this is, if you can use voice chat, this is even better. Like kids, you get the kids to go around, and it's mostly something that they can look there to see what they want. So if you're a banker, what are you looking for? You're just looking in. Right, you want debt relief, sheer tyranny. I love it. Money, money, money. That's what I think a farmer may be saying that. So this is a really great moment to give the kids to kind of start to get into character and talk to one another. If you can do breakout rooms and get them into small groups where they can introduce themselves, this would be a great moment for them to kind of get into character and chat. So once you got them all into character, then we move on to really thinking about the conflict, what's going on here, what's the big battle. And there's a video here on finance.
3 main issues are tearing Massachusetts apart. First, finance. War is expensive. During the Revolution, the state government didn't have the money to pay its soldiers. So it issued notes. State notes are debts, an IOU promise that the government will pay you in several years. But the soldiers, mostly Western farmers, couldn't wait 6 years to get their money. Farmers sold their notes to Boston bankers at a steep discount. On average, a farmer got only 50 cents in exchange for a $20 state note. Now, 80% of all the state notes are in the hands of Boston bankers. Bankers insist that if the state wants to remain creditworthy, it must pay back its debts, the notes.
And since we're running a little bit low on time, we don't really need to dwell on it too much, but basically this gives more information about the issue of finance. It goes in a little bit more depth. And this goes back to what Jenny had said about breaking the big issue down into small little chunks for them. And here, again, if you're a banker, if one of your roles, you can roll over this and get the information about what the bankers might think. So you can roll over that. You can roll over traders and see what they think of what they're arguing about finance. And then here you can have, again, breakout rooms would be a great place to do this. Like have a small discussions here where they can kind of share their different viewpoints. And start to understand the jigsaw, essentially do a jigsaw to put together what is the big problem that Massachusetts is facing. And then finally, we move on to the finance, to the proposals here. So we've got, this is sort of like the big battle. This is when you can ask kids to give speeches. Maybe they deliver them over Zoom. Or through Google Meet, where they can pick one person from each group that can kind of deliver the big speech to try and convince everybody, and each group gets to decide which of these 3 proposals related to finance are the ones that are best for them. So you can all take a moment, read that, and in a second we're going to vote on it. Usually we'd have a really fun debate here. Okay. Let's see. So let's vote on proposal. If you have that browser window up, you should be able to click in here and choose which of the 3 proposals you think is right for Massachusetts. Which one's going to solve Massachusetts finance problems? And again, this was also made, yeah, you can only choose one. There's only one option to choose. There should be 3 on the screen. Maybe it's cut. They may be cut off. Again, this was a really quick prototype. We used Google Form or Microsoft Forms for this, which some of you may be familiar with. We were really looking around at what tools are out there that are free that you could use to do things like deliver video, deliver the slides, and then also ask questions for students. So. And then finally, let's see, the winner is, looks like increased taxes on foreign imports. So wins by 1 vote, just above selling public lands to raise funds. Very few people want to, I guess only the bankers wanted to value the state notes. So usually here we would, this would be a great moment to, then we step out of the role play and talk about what actually happened in Massachusetts, do a little debrief on that for the students, and talk about the government did sell public land, taxes did drop dramatically, and then eventually the federal treasury took over Massachusetts debt. And then further stepping out of it, getting them to talk about this debrief on this issue, whether this was a 21st century, whether this was a solution that the people would have enacted at a time, or have you guys enacted a 21st century solution, and talking about like how they, their perspectives and their actions link up with history in some interesting way. So that was our really quick prototype that we threw together for this. If you're, again, as Jenny said, if you're interested at all in play testing with us, we're going to be thinking more about possible remote learning tools for the fall, and seeing how we can support teachers that are both going to be back in the classroom and then possibly not, with fun role plays and ways to engage their students. So I guess with that, I guess we can open it up to some questions.
Sorry, I was typing an answer to one of the chat questions, which was about, does the teacher have to do a lot of research on their own to be able to answer questions about the proposals? We kind of rushed through this today. So the teacher page will have a lot of information for you. And then also there are several videos. There's an overview video and there's one for each issue. And so again, it hopefully is designed so that someone who, even knew nothing about Jay's Rebellion could run the role play and take their students through, although obviously that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, one thing we didn't show today is there is a teacher view for this, which shows you, essentially it allows you to be the game master for it. It's sort of like your dungeon master guide. It shows you like questions to ask and common questions that you'll get, answers to common questions that you'll get about whatever the content is.
I would very much love to do a scenario about ancient world history. It's my favorite. So yes, we really hope to do that. And if you have any particular moments that you'd like to explore, we would love to. You can contact us on our website. You can type right here, email us. I would love to hear what y'all think would be a good event.
Yeah, please email us any suggestions for world history stuff. We would love that. We'd be very excited. Someone asked if there's analog or non-internet role play. So some of the stuff that Jenny had shown earlier, some of the Zen things and the model diplomacy are things that you can print out, and we are looking into that for Vox Pop as well. There's some right now. It's very much geared towards having pretty basic internet access. So teachers. In your classroom you would use a smart board and everyone can just use a web-enabled device, but as we kind of get a test and work with more teachers, we'll trying to figure out exactly what resources people have, and so a paper version of it is definitely something that we would want to do. Oh, I love all these world history ones. I'm like,
I think Mattia was going to answer this question. Oh, question. What does that mean? The Vox Pop materials will be available to the public for free online starting in fall 2021. The reason we're asking for playtest signups right now is that we're still developing these. We're still playtesting these. And so this coming academic year, we'll be going to classrooms and running them ourselves before we release them to the public. Mm-hmm. What else? Oh, the Zin education role-playing games are available at their website, which I've now hidden. I think it's zinedproject.org, and you can access. I signed up for a free teacher account, and I can access them all.
Yeah, and there are links in the presentation we shared with you. There are links there's links to all of the resources in there, to the model diplomacy, the Zen ones. So you should be able to click on the links in the document.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So a couple people have asked if we would want to playtest. We would love to playtest in different school environments. So there's a big slide right now right in front of you, which is go to voxpop.io and sign up, and you can we'll get in touch about how we can support you in playtesting or come to your school and test out the content that we have.
Jenny and Greg, thank you so very much for presenting today. Are there any other questions for Jenny and Greg before we go to transition? All right. Wonderful.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much. This is a real treat.
I am so excited by the work that you're doing. This is amazing. So everyone, next up at 10:45, let me make sure that I have this right. We have Dr. Mark Ruppel, who is a senior program officer at the National Endowments for the Humanities, who will be talking to us briefly. So you can stay right here until 10:45 when Mark will join us. And then after that, we have personal stories and primary sources, engaging techniques for teaching slavery.